breaking and entering, drunk and disorderly, law and order. A former prosecutor and a defence barrister, not your usual pairing. And the result? Conversations about crime and punishment that are guaranteed to get you thinking.
Welcome to Justice Matters, a weekly podcast with Lizzie Green and Jay Merchant. Our episodes are every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at Justice Matters Pod for clips. Enjoy the episode. This episode deals with descriptions and allegations of violence, domestic violence, and sexual offenses. Discretion is advised. Good morning, Liz.
Good morning, Jay.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Pretty good.
That's good.
Today, I'd like to talk about something that's been in the media, and it involves a fella that's known probably by the majority of the Gold Coast.
Interesting.
Yes. His name is Eric Thomas, a.k.a. Gable Tosti, a.k.a. Not Guilty.
Right. Yes. Definitely a familiar name.
Yes. So in the Courier Mail and on social media, so again, I'm on Twitter, there was a number of stories that came up, and this is the only reason why I know about this.
Right.
And one of the articles was titled, and this is in the Courier Mail, Woman Strangled, Pinned. They're in whatever those apostrophes are. Tostee hit with fresh high-rise claims. Okay.
Wow.
So that's one.
That was recent.
That was recent. Yes. And I'm struggling to find the date on that.
No, that's all right.
But the next one is Tostee and Strangle Claim.
Goodness.
Okay. The next one in the Brisbane Times is Gable Tosti cries sexism following casino ban after alleged strangling. Okay.
Oh, poor Mr. Tostee.
Well, he is in the news again for this, and I think he is looking at some sort of suit, at least from his response to these on social media. He's looking at some sort of action against the news corporations for these headlines.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So what happened?
Well, perhaps before we get started with what happened, maybe we'll go back to 2014.
To why he's a familiar name.
Why he's a familiar name. And so for this material, what I'm relying on is an interview that he conducted. You can go on YouTube and find it, but he conducted an interview with 60 Minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it involved himself and another party. So at the time, Mr. Tostee or Mr. Thomas, however you want to phrase it,
Choose your favorite name.
choose your name, was 28 years old, living in Surfer's Paradise. And the other person involved was a female by the name of Warina Wright. And I apologize if I mispronounce that name. 26-year-old New Zealander over here in Australia. Now, what transpired was in 2014, Mr. Tostee was living in Surfer's Paradise. Okay, he was in a high rise, and he used Tinder to meet women. Okay, online app, one of those online apps. And on the 7th of August, 2014, him and Miss Wright connected on Tinder.
Right.
Okay, they met in Surfer's Paradise. They went to the beer garden, and prior to returning back to Tostee's apartment, they picked up a 6-pack of beer or some sort of alcohol.
Sure.
And then what happened was they returned to Mr. Tostee's or Mr. Thomas's apartment, and they continued drinking and started drinking some homemade vodka or moonshine. So we've elevated the percentage of alcohol.
That sounds dangerous.
I've tried moonshine once, and I don't need to do it again.
No.
Yeah. So then what happens is obviously the intoxication levels become high, and it was a case that Miss Wright was suffering from the alcohol content. Okay.
According to Tostee.
Yes, and you can tell on the video or the audio recording that he utilized and relied on as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that audio recording was extremely important.
Was he intoxicated?
I couldn't tell on the actual audio, and I don't think that he indicated anything on the 60 Minutes interview.
Okay.
Okay. So you can tell that things become heated on the audio, and Miss Wright was intoxicated.
So they were having an argument.
There was a verbal argument. She accused him of stealing her phone at one point, and there's verbal back and forth between the two. And at one point, she threatens to destroy, and I think it was his jaw. So it further then happens that she was tossing some stones, little rocks at him. And at this point, he did, to his credit, say, look, maybe I should take you home. So he actually offered to take her home or walk her home.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which I don't know if too many people know.
Well, no, I did not know that fact.
Yeah, no. And then things went obviously pear-shaped from there. So things got more aggressive and heated, and he actually said, look, you've worn out your welcome. And chose the next words that he chose was extremely unfortunate because, and these are his words, not mine.
Yes.
But you are lucky I haven't chucked you off my balcony, you psycho little bitch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not actually a compatible Tinder match by the sounds of this.
No, not at this stage. Certainly it looked fine at the beginning, but certainly not at this stage. And so from there, you've worn out your welcome. And from there, again, things became more heated. And
so,
yep.
Is she refusing to go? She wanted to stay?
Well, I don't really know if she wanted to stay. I mean, we weren't in there, right? So we don't see anything. We just hear.
Yes.
So I don't know if she was wanting to leave at that stage, but certainly the option that Mr. Thomas or Tostee went with was to pick her up and put her out on the balcony. And he locked her out on the balcony.
Right. Okay. Well, that's wrong on so many levels.
Okay. And we'll come back to that because I'd like to get some discussion on that. And then from there, what transpires is that, and you can hear it all on the audio, it is damning. Like, it is something I've never heard before. She fell 14 stories after being locked on the balcony.
Jay.
Yeah. So 6 minutes after the fall, he exits the building and finds a pizza place in Surfer's Paradise.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. So she falls.
Yes.
And then it takes 6 minutes for him to even leave.
According to, the 60 Minutes interview that he did, they went through an entire timeline. So it took 6 minutes for him to leave. And then further, he went to Surfer's Paradise to buy a slice of pizza. And he calls his father. And that he accepts that he, forced her out onto the balcony. But he didn't think that she would have jumped off. Okay,
can we just stop for a minute?
Sure.
So Surfer's Paradise
has
so many high rises.
Yes.
And obviously I have not been to all of them. But a feature of many of them is that the balconies are small.
Yes.
And you would know if someone was still on your balcony or not. So is he saying he didn't know she'd fallen?
Oh, he knew she had fallen at that point. So he left.
He didn't call 911?
No.
Sorry, we're not in America.
Yeah.
He didn't call 000?
No, he didn't. Okay. And his explanation for that is that if he were to go out onto the balcony and somebody saw him, it would have been problematic in terms of them thinking that he threw her off.
So his first thought is not for her safety, but for his own reputation?
Well, that's probably the inference that you would draw. I mean,
he didn't have to go out there to call for help.
That's a very good point, Madam Prosecutor. Absolutely. No, he
Goodness.
didn't. But he did. He went to Surfer's Paradise. He ended up contacting his father, and then he tried his lawyer, and the lawyer didn't pick up. Okay.
Oh, I have so many issues with all of that.
Yeah. So here we go. So I want to take you back because immediately when I saw that, I thought, well, all right. if you're trying to have somebody leave or you want them to leave, they've worn out their welcome, take them to the front door
Correct.
and say, see you later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Date's over.
And I think, that was a feature in this matter that just stuck out. I mean, I've never had that type of scenario, but I know I would like to think that I wouldn't lock somebody on the balcony. I would take him to the front door and say, get the hell out of my apartment.
Yes.
Okay.
So
he did address that, by the way, but go ahead.
Well, just a side note, one of the cases we had way back when I started was from the Crown Towers in Surfers Paradise.
Yes, I know where that is.
A woman fell or was thrown or was pushed off a balcony there. But the evidence in that case was that she wanted to leave and he wouldn't let her. And so she went out onto the balcony to try and escape from him. And to me, that would be, I know we've got audio and it's probably not borne out that way, but if you have the power to get someone out, you don't put them in a place they can't get away from.
Yeah, and I don't know why you would take somebody out to the balcony. Is it the case that you want them to stay there for 2 hours and cool down, or I'm just not sure?
It's like putting a dog out. You've been naughty, go outside. Like, what's the mental process there?
Yeah, and only Mr. Tostee will know that. But I will say that he did address this, all right? Because that to me was a fundamental problem. Why would you take her to the balcony? And he said, because they pressed him on 60 Minutes, thankfully, but he said, because that's the only question that you can ask in hindsight when you're desperately trying to get someone away from you and separate you two and try and de-escalate an altercation. It doesn't come into the equation that the person is going to climb off a balcony for 14 floors to her death.
Okay. And so how long do we know it was between him locking her out there and her descent?
I can tell you that. Just one moment. I believe it was a matter of seconds.
Seconds?
Yes. So, 27 seconds after being locked out on the balcony.
And is it very obvious from the audio that he did not throw her?
Yes, it was locked. You could tell that he was inside and she was outside.
So you could still hear her outside.
You could hear the screaming as she's falling.
What was he recording on?
His mobile phone.
But so could he have left the mobile phone inside?
Very possible.
It just seems so bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Because 27 seconds is not very long.
No.
For someone to be like, oh, well, I'm going to be here for so long, I need to take an alternative course of action.
Yeah. No, I know. And I guess, the struggle that I have is, what do you expect her to do? Obviously, I think we can say that we don't expect her to jump off the balcony. But looking at it, what is the expectation of somebody that puts somebody out on the balcony?
It boggles my mind.
Yeah, me too. And, it was a very candid interview that he gave. And so what happened after that was police conducted some investigation and
Not because he called them.
No.
So obviously someone else found her.
Yeah, police were already on attendance when he was walking downstairs.
Oh my goodness. That is cold.
It certainly, yeah. I mean, most people probably think that was a horrible decision on his part.
And I think my prosecutor mind is consciousness of guilt.
It could be. It certainly could be.
That is not a normal reaction to know that someone has fallen, presumably, to their death.
Yes, I don't know anyone that could land that.
And to walk past the scene and go get pizza.
Yes.
Has he not got a heart?
Well, I don't know, but the perception is not good for Mr. Tostee on that front.
Right. So what happened? So the police are there?
Yeah, police are there and they conduct an investigation and they charge him with murder.
So they knew he was with her?
Yes.
Like from her phone or something?
Yeah, presumably because of her phone and whatever else that they found. I mean, there was CCTV footage afterwards
Okay.
that located them in what would be a very, I don't want to say loving type scenario as they met up,
But
when you
a
swipe.
passionate.
Yeah. And so the jury came back and.
But so was he charged with murder?
Yes.
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 With intent.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
No, it was murder in the alternative manslaughter.
Okay.
And the jury came back and found him not guilty
Of anything.
of anything.
Okay, why?
Can I tell you that, the recording that he did played probably the most important role in this matter. He doesn't have to give evidence, obviously.
No.
And nor should he be compelled to. But the evidence that was on the phone painted a much bigger picture in terms of the conduct of Miss Wright on the night in question.
Okay, but so here's another question for
Sure.
you. And I know I'm not on Tinder.
No, I don't even know how. I know you swipe right or left and that's it.
Well, yeah, I've been married 25 years tomorrow, actually.
Nice. Well, congratulations.
So well before the
No
technological
swiping for
age.
you.
No swiping. But why is he even recording it? Like, I have never in my life just recorded an interaction with someone else before there was a reason to. I never have. So why is he recording it?
And he goes into that in some detail to say, well, when things get heated, some of the best evidence available or some of the best tools available to come to your defense is to have an audio recording.
To come to your defense? Like, what is he planning?
Well, I might have not used his words on that. I might be paraphrasing, but it certainly, he justified it in the sense that sometimes in his experience, he needs to record.
So
Yep.
Have things gone pear-shaped on his Tinder dates before?
Don't know.
So that's one question that immediately springs to mind. But then at what point did he start recording?
I think from memory, it was when Miss Wright was using some choice language and things became heated.
And so, he's got the presence of mind to go, okay, I'm just going to record this, continue the fight. To me, that is like a calculated decision.
To record.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. But it turns out that was probably the most important piece of evidence that enabled him to be walking out of the front doors of the court complex as opposed to the cells.
Yeah, I suppose 2014, what I really would like is video footage to see what his actions were like or his demeanor, because there's only so much you can tell from audio.
That's right. And, at that point, he didn't have a full-on surveillance system in his apartment, but he relied on his mobile phone. He had the instinct to hit the record button, and that's what I would submit saved him from being found guilty.
But what about manslaughter then? I mean, if we're thinking, okay, he didn't throw her over, but manslaughter can cover a whole range of conduct. And if you're going to put someone who is that intoxicated on a balcony and lock them out there, is that not some kind of breach of duty of care at the very least?
Well, I think you raise a good point. I think that, and I don't know if Miss Wright's family has commenced proceedings, civilly on balance, but in terms of the jury, it was a unanimous no, not guilty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and, on the recording part, I mean, it might seem quite dodgy for people to record conversations. And I know, if I was in a conversation with somebody and I was secretly being recorded, I wouldn't have a good feeling about it. I wouldn't like it.
No.
And I don't think anyone would. But the law in Queensland, any party can record. And sure enough.
I just had another question.
Sure.
So when he had to explain why he went and got pizza instead of looking to see where she was and what had happened. What did he say about that?
Well, I think, his comments were that he was concerned about what might happen. And so he was hungry and went to grab a slice of pizza and then wanted to call his dad and call his lawyer. I mean, if you think about it, and I'm going to be candid here, I would like to think that if something happened like that to me, I would go down and wait for the police to arrive and hopefully trust the system. But there are people out there that just do not trust the process.
But also, if you think about this, you've locked someone on the balcony.
Yes.
And within 27 seconds, she's gone. Who's thinking so calculated and deliberate, oh, well, I'm not going to go out in case someone sees me and thinks I pushed her? Like, wouldn't every instinct be to race out there, look over the balcony to see what had happened, run downstairs? Like, that's the normal reaction.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
I feel like the system maybe got that one wrong.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we keep coming back to this concept, is there sufficient evidence for the charge that is presented? Is there an alternative charge that police could have went with that would fit, Dep Lib?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I know that the result is unfortunate for Miss Wright and Miss Wright's family and everyone involved.
Should we just say Dep Lib, deprivation of liberty?
Sorry, deprivation of liberty or something to that effect.
Yes.
And go for the charge that they could prove beyond reasonable doubt. Now, I'm not saying that they could, but the conversation maybe should have happened.
And could you tell on the audio, like, was it just a verbal argument or was there any
No, there was physical.
physicality?
So she was physical and he was reacting to the physicality of the altercation.
It is just the most tragic outcome.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going to say it was tragic for him because I don't think he cared at all.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that. I mean, when the posts came on social media, they were some that were very against him and some that were supportive.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he has two names.
Yes.
So
Eric Thomas, Gable Tosti.
Was he was Gabe Tosti?
Yes.
For the trial?
He was.
And so did that other name come about after?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, been charged with murder and wide media, social media, the whole 9 yards, wanted to change the name, presumably so that he could have some semblance of privacy. And now we're back in the media.
Actually, was he one of the people who, and maybe this wasn't in your notes,
No,
but
that's all right.
Was he restricted on use of social media or something on bail?
It could be a bail condition, certainly.
I'm pretty sure he wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
Because I talked about that in one of my lectures, some interesting bail conditions.
Oh, yeah, no.
But judges now can order that you stay off social
Yes.
media or you don't go on dating apps and that sort
That's
of thing.
right.
I think he was one of the first. I could be wrong. I'm sure everyone who knows will tell me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
But he should have been if he wasn't.
Yeah. So not guilty. Okay. And then the news articles come out about fresh claims, high-rise claims, strangled, pinned, all of that. Tostee and strangle claim. Now,
So he's back at the Gold Coast.
He's back on the Gold Coast, at least according to the reports. But this time it's actually a civil matter.
Okay.
Okay. So, and it involves the casino.
Oh, the big house.
Yeah, the casino, and this is from a Queensland QCAT decision, Queensland Civil Administrative Tribunal here in 2025. So the allegations in this matter are this. It was the case that in April 2022, security were detailed to a hotel room. There was a disturbance. And they found, upon arrival, according to the QCAT decision, a female guest on her back with her dress up over her hips and Mr. Thomas over the top of her fighting.
Oh, dear.
Okay. Ms. S. at the time told police that she had been strangled by Mr. Thomas and police detained him, as they should, took him to the watch house, and a domestic violence order was processed. Okay. So we have the hotel altercation. Then afterwards, the Star Casino Group prohibited him from entry. And this was in May. Mr. Thomas then after wrote a letter to the Star Group saying, hey, I'd like to come back in. And there was an affidavit that he furnished from Miss S. Yes,
what
the
did
alleged
that say?
complainant in that matter, to which she said she was affected by a dissociative episode during the relevant night.
What, so she can't remember it, so it doesn't matter?
Well, I don't know the details of the dissociative episode, nor do I know what's contained in the affidavit.
Sounds odd.
Yes. So at that point, the Star Casino said, all right, well, for Mr. Thomas, we're going to rescind the ban because of this new development of her recanting or changing her version of events.
So they accepted the affidavit.
They accepted the affidavit initially.
Okay.
But then they did some more digging, and they found out that Mr. Thomas was AKA Gable Tosti.
Right.
Okay. And so they communicated to him that irrespective of any shift in circumstances with the police, with Miss S, you're still banned.
So, side note,
Yes.
there obviously wasn't any charges laid.
No.
I wonder why.
Well, I can tell you right now that Mr. Tostee responded to this on social media, and he says, this is his words, not mine, he was violently, unprovokedly attacked by a highly intoxicated woman at Star, who then lied to Star staff and police, and there was staff that witnessed her attack me. Police dropped the action against me because I had audio.
Stop it.
Audio footage, he says. I don't know how you have audio footage, but audio and wounds proving that I was the victim. And even an affidavit from the woman herself admitting she lied.
Oh, my Lord. He must just record all of his.
Well, I think it's fair to say that if you have a conversation, it's going to be recorded.
Because, okay, that to me is so indicative of an expectation of violence or aggression or things going wrong or allegations.
Something.
So what does that tell you about him?
Well, I mean, given his notoriety, it might be the case that he is very protective. I'm not sure. And I see you rolling your eyes.
I am rolling my eyes. I want to know how many audio files he has from before 2014.
I mean, that OneDrive would be pretty full, I reckon. So he is taking the matter too because they banned him, and
so he's saying he's banned now, not because of the incident, but because he's Gable Tosti.
That's right.
Okay.
And he's also saying, well, why is it that she isn't banned, but I am?
And what happened to the fact he was on top of her when they went into the room? How is she the aggressor? Anyway.
Yeah, well, and I don't have the witness statements from the security guards, but certainly that's a question you'd be asking.
Well, it seems very odd.
So his concern is that, number one, she's not banned, but I'm banned. And is that sexual discrimination on the part of Star Casino?
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. And to support that claim, he then has also included some mental health and some psychological evidence to help substantiate that. So a psychologist had written an affidavit, as well as his parents, showing that there is a depression and an anxiety attached with the decision to ban him from the casino.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So he's got depression and anxiety because he can't go to the casino.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I think they need to enforce that ban because that is problematic.
Okay.
Well, there are so many other places you can go to socialize. That seems extreme.
And I get that. I think that, if you're going to show that there is, psychological anxiety, that the evidence that you show better be watertight to link the nexus. And I'm not entirely sure that it was in this matter. the psychological and social harm that it's caused him was labeled tremendous.
Tremendous.
Yes, tremendous. So
I didn't even know that was a thing, that you could say being banned from a place.
and that's a novel argument as well. Like you said, I didn't think so either. And so, yeah. So the matter has ultimately been listed for a 2-day trial. So the QCAP member had rejected it, and that was senior member Traves. He rejected this application because essentially, he didn't think there was enough evidence.
Sure.
But also it was a casino saying somebody can't come in.
Which they're entitled to do.
Well, one would think that, if you're warned out your own welcome at the casino, that they can kick you out.
And was there any indication as to which of those claims, the sexual discrimination versus the mental harm,
Yes.
would be the more persuasive?
That's a good question.
Or they were both just rejected by...
it was rejected. I mean, the member talked about the common law right to refuse entry, and that was the main focus. And the other focus is why are we going to grant this interim order when we're going to have a final hearing in 2025? Right. But also that this happened in 2022, so why are we raising it now in 2025 as opposed to raising it sooner?
Why? What was the delay?
I didn't get that in there.
I wonder if that was to make sure all of the police matters were, done and dusted before he brought the claim.
It could be the case. I mean, there's so much to unpack there with this one, because on one respect, we might not agree, or you might agree, but with the jury process, they found him not guilty. They found him not guilty of murder. And so what is somebody in that position supposed to do in terms of,
moving on?
Yeah, and social activities. I can understand him changing his name. I really can. I mean, but you're going to find out.
But also, he's not the only person who's been charged with a crime like that and been found not guilty. Like, it's part of the process.
Yeah.
And the system. It's the way it has to work if we're going to have this adversarial jury system.
Yeah.
So, yes, okay, unfortunate if he's innocent of anything. I don't know that he is.
He was found not guilty.
I know he was found not guilty, but I wonder...
He hasn't done anything legally wrong.
No, I understand that. But I also think, I say all the time that juries are unpredictable.
They are.
You can go into court thinking you have a slam dunk case and they'll come back not guilty. You might have a trial where you think, I hope they convict, and they convict in, the blink of an eye. So you cannot predict what a jury's going to do. But also, when it's something like murder, which comes with the alternative of manslaughter, I think that's a hard concept for a jury to wrap their head around, because if they're not convinced beyond reasonable doubt of the elements of murder, and then they say, okay, but if you think some of those elements might be made out, you can convict of something lesser. They're like, but we weren't convinced here. What's the standard here?
Yeah.
I think it can be very difficult
and confusing, perhaps.
And so then if they're like, well, we don't think he murdered her, so let's just go with not guilty. Like, I think that can happen.
Yep. Or the alternative in that they reviewed all the evidence and...
Yes. No, I'm not casting any shade on the jury. They may have very thoroughly examined every issue. I have no knowledge because jury deliberations are secret.
Yeah.
But I think as a general rule, just because we have a jury verdict, well, we know there are wrongful convictions. So there have to be, on the flip side, wrongful acquittals.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're right on that front. If you take a look at what and I don't know, I've never been in anything like that, but this is somebody that if he goes to the grocery store, people are going to recognize him. And, moving forward, I'm not saying that something else will happen, but, if he's pulled over by police, they can do their little checks and see flags on their system.
But wouldn't the flags be gone once he's acquitted?
I can tell you right now, and my police friends and police that are listening and viewing, flags, I could do a right click on your name right now, Liz, and put in anything I want, and it's unchecked, untested.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I would hate to see the flags I have after the last matters that have involved police in the witness box.
Interesting.
So, I mean, there's this concept of, all right, how does he move on? And, you know, we do talk about human rights, fair hearing, you know, presumption of innocence. But, you know, part of the reason why we're talking about this, part of the reason why it's in the press is because he brought the proceeding in QCAT himself.
Yeah, he's shone the spotlight on himself.
Back on himself.
Yes.
And so there is that element as well. You know, I'm having flashbacks to a story on Twitter about Bruce Lerman being photographed out in public and now as a nanny down in New South Wales. Well, had the photo not been taken, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yes.
So I'm not sure, but this matter is due for a 2-day hearing in Brisbane. So we'll see what transpires, but there's a lot to unpack there.
I think it is tough if you have been the focus of media scrutiny and you are innocent. I think it's tough even if you are guilty and you've served your time and then you still have that media attention on you. I also talk about a guy who was a serial pedophile here in Queensland, and he was persecuted even after he'd been released from prison, and he ended up having to live in a little house on prison grounds because whatever community he moved into, understandably to an extent because of the nature of his crimes, but they would egg his house and abuse him verbally and stuff, and he did end his life there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the media and public scrutiny can be a powerful, powerful thing.
It can be. And, you know, the notion on these is that, all right, it's not like he was charged with a whole raft of offenses, but they still went ahead with, you know, strangled, pinned with fresh high-rise claims. So whether or not there's any merit in any sort of defamation action, I don't know. I'm not a defamation guy.
The media have latched on to the offences which were not pursued.
Well, and that's part of why I think he's taking issue with it.
Because that's
right?
the clickbait, isn't it? It's not as exciting to say banned from casino.
That's right. I mean, yeah, you know, no roll of the dice for you, Mr. Tostee.
Wow.
But it's a sad story because Miss Wright lost her life, and I'm not sure that the family has closure because of what transpired. And there's only one person that knows what happened. And, you know, to some credit, at least he did go on 60 Minutes, tried to explain it. Now, whether or not you agree with his version of events is another matter. But he did give a version, and he didn't have to.
Well, I'm sure he got paid handsomely for it.
Oh, I don't know how that works, yeah.
Oh, 100% he would have been paid for that.
Well,
I can't get past the audio. I just can't.
You should listen to the audio. It is intense, and it's intense because you can hear anger on both sides. You can hear a level of vulnerability and desperation.
From her part.
Yes, but also you can hear him at times being the recipient of something. So whether it's a rock or whether it's a camera pod or whatnot. So, and then obviously you hear her out on the balcony, it being shut, and some noise as she falls.
Oh my goodness.
But without that audio, I think we would be having a different conversation in the sense of perhaps he would have been found guilty.
Yes. Yes.
So
well, there would have been all of the trace evidence because they had been physical with each other. So,
well, and there would be nothing
to refute his claim.
That's right. So in this respect, the recording was what saved him in my submission from locking up the front door.
I don't know that we want to advocate secretly recording people
Just
all of the
time. Just record everyone. Don't do that, ladies and gentlemen. It's not nice.
It's not nice.
No.
And then also don't do things that might result in you needing to use that recording. As in, don't lock someone out on a balcony when they're so intoxicated and fired up and to not even, and also he didn't know her. Like
they
locking
met
her
on-
out there,
Yeah.
how's he going to know what her reaction's going to be? You know, it's not that should play a part, but, you know, if it was something that had happened before.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I certainly, you know, I agree with you on that front. I don't know. Again, I come back to I don't know what the expectation of him was when he put her on the balcony. You know?
Goodness me. Well, we'll have to see what happens with the QCAT. I would like to think that the most meritorious claim would have to be the sexual discrimination. Like, I'm not a fan of
Yes.
Tostee, but I think if we're going to have a legal argument on something, I'm not convinced on the depression
No.
at not being allowed into a casino.
Well, and there's anti-discrimination legislation that would support a claim if there was merit. So
That's right. So
Yeah.
if she was also a troublesome patron,
yes.
then that could potentially have merit, because that should be an equal treatment of
I agree.
all offenders.
I agree.
But I'm still stuck on the fact she was the one pinned to the ground, and how is that her being the aggressor? And,
Well, we don't know what was in her affidavit,
True.
right? So
but what if he? Well, now I'm
no.
speculating, but
Yeah, we don't know any of the communication had between the two of them prior to, but he was on a domestic violence order, so presumably there would be a lack of contact. But
because everybody obeys the
Hey,
domestic violence orders.
Yes, those pieces of paper have teeth.
Gummy.
Yeah,
teeth.
gummy teeth. Yeah. So I don't know, but it's fascinating because it's back in the news, involves a familiar party, and some of the elements of the 2014 matter are now again
being brought up,
being ventilated. Yeah.
And actually, is the official court document from QCAT, what name is that in?
So it is in Thomas and the Star Entertainment, Queensland Limited, and Anor, 2025 QCAT 173.
So he's not going by
No, he's
Tostee
not
anymore.
Tostee. It's Thomas. That's why I said Eric Thomas, a.k.a. Gable Tosti, a.k.a. not guilty.
But so all of the media reports are saying Tostee.
Because everybody knows who he is by that name and not by
I wonder if
Thomas.
That's even an action on its own.
I don't know.
That's not his legal name anymore.
It's the case that I just don't know, right? Like, I'm not a defamation guy. Although these days it would be lucrative. If
there's a lot going on,
there's
isn't
a lot going on in
Yes.
that space.
Yes.
So I'm not entirely sure, but you know, I thought it would be an interesting conversation to have, and no doubt our viewers and listeners will have some comments and commentary on the matters.
I'm
and
sure.
You know,
Sure. Any jurors out there, have we had enough time pass that you can tell us?
Yeah.
No,
I
you
don't
can't.
think they can.
I know, I'm joking.
Objection.
That would be an offence. Jurors, do not disclose.
Do that.
No.
That's a no.
I wish we had.
I know. I wish it was like the States where they could do tell-alls and write books and give interviews and all that.
But can you imagine how many claims there'd be of, you know, issues with jury deliberations then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to Mr. Thomas.
Yes. And we'll see what transpires with the QCAT hearing.
He'll probably record it.
It will be, it'll be one way or another, it will be recorded. All right.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, please rate and review the podcast. If you're interested in clips, check out @Justice Matters Pod on TikTok and Instagram.